9 out of 10 home sellers regret selling their home. As a real estate agent, this statistic is super concerning. Now, part of the reason for this statistic was the anomaly in the market over the last 4 years. With home values going up 30 to 40%, a lot of home sellers didn't want to miss out and maybe sold a little bit too quickly. But the other reason, and this gets me super fired up, is bad guidance by agents. A recent survey by Clever Real Estate found that 89% of home sellers have regrets with the sale of their home. So I'm going to share with you exactly what they regretted the most, what they would have done differently, and what you can do to make sure that you don't become one of those 89% regretful sellers. Now, at the top of the list, the number one regret was that the cost of selling their home was much higher than what they expected. Now, according to the survey, the typical cost to sell a home in 2024 is $54,616. That's a lot of money. And it depends on where you are in the country. That number will be higher, it may be lower. But if we look at what those costs that they are including in that number, you have at the very top staging cost $22.63. I'm going to tell you right now, not everybody does staging cost. And to be perfectly honest, I rarely have my sellers pay for staging. So this is a number that is not on every single transaction. Marketing cost. $2,300 for marketing cost seems high. Typically, a real estate agent will absorb most of that marketing cost, in my experience, unless you have an exceptional property, an unusual property that maybe might require extra marketing. Moving cost, super subjective, $3,250, depending on where you're moving within the state, you're crossing state lines. That number could be considerably higher. Again, these are averages. Buyer concessions. Buyer concessions, we didn't really see those. We haven't seen those in many years before the pandemic, before 2020. We're going to start to see those more often now that the commission rules have changed, and there will be more negotiation on how commissions work and how those commissions get structured into the overall sale of the property. But they have it estimated at about $7,200. I think that's a little high. Okay, because they do compensate down here for the buyer agent commission. So I think this number seems higher than it should be. Closing cost, $8,000. That number seems higher than what it should be. Again, the closing costs are going to vary depending on the state. You do have things like state transfer tax in some states. You do have fees for paying off mortgages and discharging the deed, recording the deed, and so forth. That number on top of a commission sounds extraordinarily high. Repairs. Now, they have the average repair around your home is about $10,000. $10,000 to take care of anything that comes up at a home inspection or anything that you may need to do, prior to putting the house on the market. Then you have your buyer agent commission. They have it estimated $10,467 and seller agent commission $11,136. So this number, all these expenses, if you are sitting down with your real estate agent and they are not disclosing what these expenses are up front, there's a high probability you're going to have some sort of regret or a surprise at the closing table. I would say that every real estate agent, if you are working with an agent, you need to know what those net numbers are up front. If you are not working with an agent, you need to know what those net numbers are up front. And the survey goes on to say that with the high cost of commission eating away a potential profit, 1 in 5 sellers, 21%, say they regret how much they paid their agent. This is especially true among sellers who don't believe their agent delivered any valuable service. That drives me crazy. It drives me crazy that 80% of the agents in the industry are doing exactly that. And I know I'm vocal about that on this channel, and I believe it with every ounce of my being that 80% of the agents are untrained and are not delivering what the sellers deserve. It says half of sellers, 50%, say their agent failed them. Specifically, 57% say their agent's advice let them down. 53% say their agent made mistakes. 50% say their agent didn't communicate enough. This makes me so frustrated. And for sure, I did a video about how to not hire a lousy agent that covers some of these items. It says 60% of unrepresented home sellers wanted to save money on commission. Now, here's a super interesting point. It says to avoid high commission, some sellers chose to forego a real estate agent altogether, which is often the case. Although 59% of unrepresented sellers say they chose not to use an agent to save money, the hassle of selling a home without a professional may not be worth the savings. Sellers who did not hire an agent saved only $4,200 compared to those that did. And then here's the thing that is I think it just hits the nail on the head. And it's something that a lot of consumers don't realize. And again, this is coming from a place of when you're working with one of those 20% agents, one of those 20% agents that actually represents your best interest, that actually is going to work for you, that you're going to feel like you're getting every ounce of value for the dollar you're paying. And it says unrepresented sellers may have saved slightly over their high selling expenses, but they missed out on even bigger returns by not working with an agent. And this is not me saying this. This is an independent study, this is an independent survey. It says sellers who hired an agent made $34,000 more in profit than those who did not hire an agent. Sellers who hired an agent made $34,000 more in profit than those who did not hire an agent. It absolutely is a friction, and a lot of this regret could be avoided by having a good agent that goes over these expenses ahead of time. And that's something that you can do to prevent yourself from falling into that pitfall of regret, is knowing the numbers up front. Now, reason number 2 was timing mistakes. 30% of home sellers felt like they sold too quickly. Now, at the height of the market, when offers were coming in way over asking price, there was a big problem with FOMO, or fear of missing out. So homeowners would put their houses on the market because they didn't want to miss out on all those high prices to take advantage of all that equity. And then they would get a slew of offers, and it would be fast and furious. You'd have a ton of offers and people waiving home inspections and waiving appraisals, and it was almost too good to be true, and a lot of people jumped right on it. They didn't take a step back to really think about whether this is the thing they should be doing right now. They just jumped on it, and they wanted to take advantage of it because everybody else is taking advantage of it, so it must be the right thing to do. And then after they did that, fast forward, they took a step back and realized they probably shouldn't have sold when they did. So that whole period of time was very chaotic and caused a ton of regret. Now, regret number 3 is emotional attachment. 29% of home sellers miss their old home. They sold it too fast, and now they regret selling it, and they want it back. And I've actually seen this happen, where home sellers, after the sale closes, maybe a few months down the line, will actually come back and try to buy it back from the buyers. I have seen situations where the buyer ends up having to sell the property in a year, where a home buyer will a year later put the house back on the market because they have to relocate or whatnot, and the original owner will come back and buy the house back. It's kind of a sad situation. It's a really sad situation. And that can be avoided, again, by not rushing through the process. So I can't stress enough the importance of working with the right agent, because that actually segues into regret number 4, which is pricing regret. 28% of home sellers felt they didn't sell their house for enough money. Now you might be thinking, how is that possible? Prices have gone through the roof. Home sellers have seen a lot of equity over the last 4 years. But the reality of it is, not every home seller feels that way. Not every home seller was able to take advantage of that. And a lot of it is attributed to misguided agents giving the wrong price, either not interpreting the comps correctly or intentionally underpricing the house to create more buzz and get more offers, and ultimately maybe selling the house for a lot less than it probably should have to get a quick sale. And then the other piece is on the for sale by owner side. The fact of the matter is when you list with a real estate agent, you'll expose your home to more buyers, And you'll have the benefit of having experiential knowledge from the agent to advise you how to interpret the comps, the comparable properties. Yes, everyone has access to what has sold in your neighborhood. It's not the data that's important, it's the interpretation of the data. And having a lousy agent interpret that data incorrectly could cost you a ton of money. So how do you avoid that regret? You guessed it, align yourself with a great agent. And how do you find one of these great agents? Well, I can actually help you with that. I've been in the business since 1996. I've helped over 800 families move all over the country. I know who the 20% great agents are, and I know who the 80% lousy agents are. I put together a list of vetted agents, top agents that I'm happy to connect you with. It doesn't cost you anything. I do get a referral fee that's between me and the agent if you decide to work with them, but it doesn't cost you anything directly. You just click the link down below, fill out the form. There's some questions, some information that I'll want to get from you just so I can make sure that I match you with the right agent, and that way you'll be able to avoid all of these regrets. Now, regret number 5 is going to be poor home preparation. 26% of home sellers said they wish they made more repairs before putting the house on the market. Now, over the last few years, with the shortage of inventory and the abundance of buyers, a lot of homeowners thought, well, why should I put any money into repairs? There are tons of buyers ready to bang down my door that'll buy the house as is. I'm just going to sell it the way it is and not spend the money on the repairs. And unfortunately, that doesn't always pan out the way you want it to pan out. Now, I did a video recently about doing repairs before the home inspection and how that will actually save you money. A repair after home inspection can end up costing you a lot more money than if you had that repair done before the home went on the market. The next regret that home sellers had was selling without an agent. 23% said they should have sold with an agent. Now, the number one reason a homeowner doesn't use an agent is to save money. But there are a couple other reasons that I wanted to note. Homeowners also sold without an agent because 58% said that they thought it would be more convenient. 57% said they thought it would be faster. 57% said they wanted to handle their own showings and negotiations. The survey goes on to say selling a home without an agent is possible, but it can make an already complicated process even more difficult. And then this next part, which is a little scary, 46% of unrepresented sellers say they made legal mistakes during the sale, and 40% said that buyers didn't trust them. I have seen that happen. I have seen buyers reach out to me, buyers that I'm working with, and ask me about for sale by owners that they see on Zillow or Redfin or see a sign in a yard. And there is resistance. There's a resistance when there's not another agent on the other side vouching for the seller. And then it goes on to say, in the end, 54% of unrepresented sellers regret not using an agent. Now, if the number one reason why a home seller does not want to use a real estate agent is to save money, as I mentioned earlier, sellers who hired an agent made $34,000 on average more in profit than those who did not hire an agent. So that makes me super frustrated because those sellers were dealing with the 80% agent. Those sellers did not have the advantage of dealing with a 20% agent and left a ton of money on the table. And at the end of the day, I'm not trying to convince you to use an agent or not use an agent. My goal here is to educate you. I want you to educate you so you can advocate for yourself, so that when you do commit to an agent, you're committing for the right reasons. If you do list on your own, you're doing it for the right reasons. And that ties into the last part of this survey that I wanted to get into, which is that 90% of home sellers said they would make different decisions. The survey goes on to say that about 67% of first-time sellers were surprised by the cost of selling their home. But previous home selling experience does little to prepare home sellers for the expense, with 58% of repeat sellers saying they were still surprised by the cost. Had they had known the true cost of selling their home, 89% would have made different decisions. In hindsight, more than 1 in 3 sellers would have. 36% listed their home for a higher amount, 35% waited for more offers, 32% negotiated more with the buyer, 31% waited to sell until home prices increase. 31% negotiated commission with their agent. Okay, please, please, please. I want to help you so badly with all of these so that you don't feel this when you go to sell your house. If you don't feel 100% comfortable with the price that the house is listed at, question your agent. Find out where the data is coming from. Push them, because you need to know. You don't have to go along with it. You need to know exactly why the number is the number. You don't necessarily need to love it, but you need to understand it. And that is crucial. If you are feeling pressured to accept an offer, if you're not sure whether you accept an offer, if you're not getting that feeling of reassurance and information from your agent, push back, because the agent's not doing their job. 31% would have waited to sell until home prices increase. I'm going to say that's going to be subjective, because looking in your rearview mirror is far easier than looking into the future. And we never know the trajectory, the exact trajectory of home prices. I have said this before many times in my videos. I will bang that drum louder and louder. You should never, ever plan your purchase or your sale based on the market. You're always going to plan it based on your personal circumstances. Will you potentially miss out on increasing sale prices? Yes, that's entirely possible. But you can't predict exactly what's going to happen with that. You have to live in the moment for what is good for you today. And then 31% said they wish they negotiated commission with their agent. Now, this is obviously a hot topic right now. There's a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of changes. I did a full video on that. You can check that out here or here, wherever it pops up. And you can watch that video. I'll go into depth. I will be making more content on that as things change and develop, because it will be a changing situation over the next 6 months. Absolutely have the conversation with your agent. If you're dealing with a professional agent, you will be able to have a conversation. If that agent becomes defensive, show them the door. That's not the right agent for you. Now, going through the home sale process, there's a lot to take into consideration. It is a complicated process because of all the moving parts. It's not just selling your home. It's the packing and the organizing and then the moving and then where you're moving to and then all of these other little decisions in between. And you want to make sure that you do it in the right order, and you do it in a way that doesn't cost you undue stress and cost you money. And as with most big things, having professional guidance always helps the process. However, there are some things that you wanted to look out for during the process. Now, I made a video, you can check it out here, about tactics you want to avoid when you're selling. I'm Sylvester, and I'm here to help you be a savvy home seller.